What's going on, ladies and gentlemen? It's Daniel, and welcome back to our video. Today, I'll be doing a small little NASCAR silly season update where I'm going to go through some of the big questions surrounding the silly season for 2025 to 2026. We'll first begin by talking about the things that have been answered in recent weeks, and then talk about the things that still need to be answered in regards to the 2026 NASCAR season. So anyways, let's go ahead and jump into it. Let's begin by talking about the things that we've known at this point over the course of the last week or so. It was confirmed a couple days ago that Ross Chastain will be returning to Trackhouse Racing in 2026 and has signed a contract with the team for the 2027 season. We have, of course, been expecting that he was going to return to the program next year. We weren't sure how long his contract was. We now know he'll be with the team through 2027. The other thing that was confirmed earlier this week was that Sammy Smith will be returning to Junior Motorsports in 2026 to continue driving a number 8 car. He has picked up wins so far throughout the 2025 season. That, of course, after being Jesselov got disqualified at Rockingham, but Sammy Smith will be back because of sponsorship and funding that he has currently at the moment. So those are the answer questions in regards to silly season. Let's now talk about the unanswered things we don't know currently at the moment for 2026. Beginning, of course, with Daniel Suarez. Daniel Suarez is probably the number one person on the free agency market currently at the moment for the 2026 season, as there's a lot of unknowns in regards to what's going on with Daniel Suarez, as Daniel Suarez will not return to Trackhouse Racing in the 2026 season. It seems like it's narrowed down to between two organizations currently at the moment. The first one, of course, involving in the NASCAR Cup Series. There is a chance and possibility that Daniel Suarez could end up over Spire Motorsports in the 2026 year to drive the number 7 car. We'll talk about Justin Hailie here in just a second, but he's been linked over the number 7 car. It would make some sense considering some of the sponsorship that he has, but also because he does have affiliation with Chevrolet still to this day, and there is a chance he could end up at Spire next year. But if he doesn't go to Spire, I think the most likely option will be going down to the NASCAR Xfinity Series to compete for Junior Motorsports and taking over either the number 88 car or maybe getting the number 9 car that he used to win at Mexico City. Daniel Suarez could end up at JRM. It would make a lot of sense for him to rebuild his career because there's not really a lot of good Cup options at the moment right now for the 2026 year. But there's a lot of questions surrounding Daniel Suarez and whether he will return to this program or will he'll head in 2026. Speaking of Justin Hailie, there's a lot of uncertainty around Justin Haley's future currently at the moment for at least the 2026 year. There was talk about him losing his ride even throughout the 2025 year, but we expect him to continue driving a 7 car throughout the remainder of this year. But there have been questions that he could lose his ride at the end of the year. I've said this from the get-go multiple times, but it would make no sense to remove Justin Hailie because I think it would be very incredibly foolish for them to get rid of Justin Hailie after they really put him in a bad position to begin with in the first place. So there's a chance Justin Hailie could be looking for a new ride going into next year, but there's also a chance he could potentially end up somewhere else or at least stay with Spire in 2026 as well. One driver, though, that has emerged as a surprise candidate to go over to Spire Motorsports is actually Ricky Stenhouse Jr. Now, Ricky Stenhouse Jr. has dispelled the rumors that he's going to end up at Spire Motorsports next year, but let's just say there's a lot of contract stuff among other things, and let's just say Spire has a lot of money backing them. And if I had to choose between Justin Hailie, Daniel Suarez, or Stenhouse, I would definitely go with Stenhouse in a heartbeat because Ricky does have a lot of funding backing him currently at the moment. So I would expect that Stenhouse, if he doesn't go and return to Hayek, he could end up over the Spire Motorsports team. I think this actually is a possibility if things end up going at this point. But we'll see what happens with Stenhouse. I think there's a good chance he also stays with Hayek next year. Moving away from Chevrolet, let's talk about Toyota. One of the biggest conversations is around Corey Heim on that front. Corey Heim right now does not have a ride for 2026. It's expected that Caden Honeycutt is going to place him in the number 11 truck in the 2026 year, as Corey, from what has been reported, will likely be with multiple organizations next year, which doesn't make sense because I think he should be full-time in the Cup Series with 2311, but I digress at this point considering that team doesn't really have a future at the moment depending on what happens with the lawsuit, though they've announced they're going to counterclaim. But Corey Heim, he could potentially be doing a split thing where he makes select starts for Tricon, then races for Sam Hunt Racing, and they may end up driving part-time for 2311 Racing next year. I think he should be full-time at this point, but who knows, but his plans are up in the air. He could be racing for multiple teams next year. Continuing the Toyota camp, let's talk about Jesse Love. There's been rumors about Jesse Love potentially going over to Legacy Motor Club for the 2026 NASCAR Cup Series season, as Legacy is trying to get a third charter for next year. Now, Jordan Bianchi has dispelled these rumors by saying maybe that's not fully on the tables, and even if they get a third charter, they wouldn't have the infrastructure and the program ready to go. There is a chance Jesse Love could return to Richard Schultz Racing in 2026. I think there's just as much of a possibility that Jesse Love could end up over at Legacy next year, depending on what happens on that front, but wouldn't be surprised if things happen at this point. Going back over to the Chevrolet camp, there's a lot of talk that Corey Day will be going full-time in the NASCAR Xfinity Series in 2026 with Hendrick Motorsports. They've been running the 17 car quite a bit more this year than prior seasons, and Corey Day is very highly liked by Kyle Larson, as Kyle Larson's taken Corey Day under his wing, and I think Corey Day is a pretty talented guy. I know he's had some mistakes this year, but has shown some improvement. There's a very good chance and possibly you're going to see Corey Day full-time in the Xfinity Series. I think will likely be at the Hendrick Motorsports camp next year in a full-time car to 17. We could see Hendrick have a second part-time car for the Cup Series drivers. Let's go over to Ford. It's expected that Chandler Smith will be returning to Spire Motorsports in 2026, though he did say this week he still has not signed anything yet for 2026, but many like him are expected to return to their teams next year. Chandler's shown some potential, though it's been a bad couple races to start the playoffs for the NASCAR Craftsman Truck Series this year, but I would expect Chandler Smith more than likely return to the front row next year, as I think he's had a good season with the team, with 2 wins already so far this year. Also would expect Lane Riggs to come back to the program as well, because Lane Riggs had a really strong year with the team, with being only the other driver with more than 2 wins this year. Of course, the other guy being Corey Heim, who has dominated this season. Moving over to the Dodge side of things for trucks, Kaulig Racing's truck program, there have been some questions about who will be in the program next year. The favorite for this is Brendan Butterby Queen. He, of course, made his Xfinity Series debut with Kaulig Racing this past week at Bristol, and Brendan Butterby Queen is very highly linked over to the Kaulig Truck Series program for next year. There's also a lot of talk about Daniel Dye potentially driving for the program next year. We've heard other names like Cletus McFarland and Corey LaJoie, among other names, but there's also other people that may surprise you, Lost out, who could end up being over at the seat next year. That's a name I've heard about at this point, potentially going over there. But Kaulig's truck program is also a really big question, as we're still waiting on who is going to end up over there next season. I think it make a lot of sense to bring in like a Brendan Butterby Queen, a Brett Moffitt, a Kyle Weatherman, but I think you'll be seeing some of that announced here very soon, as we're waiting for Ram to get the go-ahead to make the move for the 2026 year. Let's go back to Ford/Toyota. There's a lot of talk about Taylor Gray's future in NASCAR. Many think there's basically 2 rides up for grabs for Taylor Gray. It's either Joe Gibbs Racing or Front Row Motorsports. We have heard rumors about Front Row potentially opening up a third truck for the 2026 season. I think Breakar mentioned this on his channel during the podcast, but Front Row's looking to have a third truck for next year, and Taylor Gray's name has been linked over to that seat. I think it'd make a lot more sense for him to stay with Joe Gibbs Racing, though, next year, considering I think Taylor Gray's been doing a really good job and has been way better than William Swalch this year, if I'm going to be honest. But we could see Taylor Gray back in the NASCAR Craftsman Truck Series next year, and if he does go back Truck Series racing, it would be with Front Row Motorsports, but there's also a really solid chance and possibly as well that you may see Taylor Gray back in the Xfinity Series with Joe Gibbs Racing in the 2026 O'Reilly Auto Parts year with the Joe Gibbs Racing team. Speaking of young development drivers, let's talk about Carson Quaffle. There is a lot of talk that Carson Quaffle has signed a development contract with Team Penske, and it seems like it's been pretty well known at this point by many in the industry. Now, there's been talk about him going over to Team Penske in the O'Reilly Auto Parts Series next year, but some think he is going to stay with Junior Motorsports next season, as Penske may not have a program, despite the fact that the Haas factory team will be switching to Chevrolet, and there may not even be more than 1 or 2 teams that are with Ford next season. That's a big question at this point. What is going to happen with the Ford program past 2025 at this point, and who's going to be a part of that? But if Team Penske does open up their Xfinity or O'Reilly Auto Parts program once again, I would expect a guy like Carson Quaffle, potentially maybe even Harris Suburban as well, to end up in that program in 2026 as potential candidates for that seat. Speaking of former drivers of AM Racing, let's talk about Hailie Deegan. Hailie Deegan is rumored, according to what's been reported in the last couple days, according to Breakard as well. It sounds like Hailie Deegan could be on the fritz of returning to NASCAR in the 2026 year. As he stated in recent videos, apparently it's been rumored that she has been scooping around shops, and the main one is McAnally Hilgeman Racing. McAnally Hilgeman Racing has not announced their lineup yet for the 2026 season on who is going to be over at that program, but she does bring some funding and sponsorship to the table. This surprised me considering she does still, to my understanding, have a deal with Ford. I could be wrong on that though, but of course she left over to go to IndyCar and it just really didn't work out with Ford. We'll see what happens for her, but again, there's a lot of talk about this. It seems like it's growing at this point. We could see her in the Craftsman Truck Series once again. We'll see how she does. McAnally's shown a lot of good stuff this year, so she would have no excuses being over that program if she does return, but she's linked to McAnally at this moment. Another driver that's been linked to trucks in some way, shape, or form is Cletus McFarland. There was talk earlier this year about Cletus going over to Dodge and working with the Kaulig racing team next year. It sounds like he is working on something for 2026. He doesn't have anything to announce at this moment right now after running the ARCA race at Bristol. He will be running Daytona, but the big question is, will it be ARCA or will it be the NASCAR side of things? Could we see him in the truck series? It is a potential possibility, but I think Cletus, it makes some sense for him to come and race in NASCAR in the future, at least for 2026, make a few starts. He could end up at Kaulig on a part-time basis with Dodge. Who knows at this point, but it seems like that deal's up in the air. We'll see what Cletus ends up doing in 2026. Another driver we expect to be returning to the Truck Series next year is Rajah Caruth. He is working on a deal currently at the moment for next season to be back with Spire Motorsports. There has been some questions about Spire's future. Maybe they can be moving up to Xfinity. Maybe they're going to stay in trucks next year. It sounds like Rajah, if they do come back, will be into 71 once again, but it's been noted by the Daily Downforce, which, credit them or not, he's been rumored to be making some select starts at Junior Motorsports. There was talk earlier this year about him making starts at Hendrick Motorsports. That, of course, did not end up happening. But Rajah could be driving for JRM in the number 88 or another car at this point in the program. But Rajah, I think, is someone who deserves a chance and opportunity to make starts in the secondary series like he made this year. Another driver that's expected to potentially be full-time in Xfinity next year is Brent Cruz. There's a lot of talk about him moving up with Joe Gibbs Racing full-time once he turns 18 years old. He will turn 18 in March of next year, and Brent is being touted as a potential new replacement for Denny Hamlin once he retires at the end of 2027. We are expecting Hamlin to retire in the next couple years, even if they do change the format. Brent Cruz is being touted as the next big thing. I'm not sure Brent is fully ready for a Cup ride in any way, shape, or form, but he's really, really talented and could potentially have a ride with JGR and Cup in the not-so-distant future. One driver whose questions in future is unknown is also Josh Williams. Josh Williams making select starts recently with Alpha Prime. He lost his ride with Kaulig Racing in the middle of this season, and we could see Josh Williams potentially having some starts in the Xfinity Series, maybe going full-time in the Xfinity next year. That is a potential possibility next year, but I think there's some big questions around him, where he's going to end up. He could end up at DGM again like he was for many, many years. We'll see where he ends up going next season. Another driver whose future is in question is Andres Perez. He doesn't have anything signed yet for 2026. Yes, he's been racing for Nice Motorsports the remainder of the season after losing his ride with Spire, but I think Andres, it's a big question, right? Will Andres, of course, stay in the Craftsman Truck Series with them or go to a new team for next season to say with Chevrolet, as Chevy's very high on Andres? Could he move up to Xfinity? That's also a possibility, but he's someone to watch out for in this silly season, at least in the lower tier, about maybe going to team or going maybe to another manufacturer. Finally, let's talk about Corey LaJoie. Corey LaJoie is another driver whose future is definitely a little bit in question for 2026. He technically still has a contract with Spire for the remainder of this season, but he's also a reserve driver for Brad Keselowski and RFK Racing right now in the Ford camp. There was talk about him, rumors about the whole TJ Pusher thing coming into play, but obviously with that litigation going on, I think there's some unknowns about that at this point right now. We'll just have to kind of wait and see what's going to happen on that front for 2026 on Corey LaJoie, but I would think Corey LaJoie is someone to watch out for in this silly season, as he could move up or make moves next year in the next season. Those are the big questions. Let's talk about some other quick notable things. Eric Almirola has been talking about him maybe coming back in some way, shape, or form next year to NASCAR. He hasn't announced anything yet. He, of course, has 2 wins in the Xfinity Series, so if he does come back, it would likely be in the secondary series. I mentioned Spire Motorsports. There's talk about Spire potentially opening up an Xfinity program again, but they've kind of denied that at this point. And there's some smaller things around the lawsuit, like Bubba Wallace, of course. We also know 2026 is going to be wild with Kyle Larson and Alex Bowman potentially being free agents, though some of those guys will sign contract extensions with their teams. We'll have to wait and see what happens, but that really isn't going to be it on that. So that is going to be it for the silly season update, the unanswered questions video. I want to thank you guys for watching. Please subscribe to the channel. Notifications on so if I win a video, it does go live on my channel. Follow me on Facebook and Instagram, and support me on Patreon as well. Link description below that, and comment your thoughts below on today's video. Where do you think some of these drivers are going to end up next year? Do you think Hailie Deegan will come back to NASCAR? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. Where do you think Daniel Suarez does end up next season? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. Tomorrow on the channel, we're probably going to have 2 NASCAR news videos dropping on the channel, since we got to talk about a lot of people like Hailie Deegan, Cletus McFarland, talk about Suarez potentially a little bit as well, talk about Brendan Butterby Queen's future, the Kaulig racing team, and lawsuit updates as well. So we had a lot of those as of late. We got a ton of content coming out of other people as well, like Will Brown, Brock Feeney, Cam Waters, Carl Edwards, Kurt Busch, Kyle Busch, Bubba Walls, Ross Chastain, Kyle Larson, Chase Elliott as well. We got some other great content dropping this week. We had a New Hampshire and some fun videos coming for you guys soon that I think you're going to be enjoying in the near future, along with Junior Motorsports as well. So anyways, like I said, I want to thank you guys for watching today's episode. I'll see you guys next time for more great, awesome NASCAR content, other motorsports content on the channel like this. Take care, everybody.